Hey, welcome to the Christ Revealed YouTube channel. I got a great interview coming up for you. Really great to be here with you. Enjoy this interview. Is there a certain key dots that you connected that kind of started having things fall together for you?
For me personally?
Yes. Or that you put together for others who you're trying to communicate this message to?
For me, not so much personally because of, as I described, that process, me becoming a Christian. And it was later that these things would kind of come together. Mm-hmm. Now as I look at the whole thing, I have a tendency to more systematize it.
Yes.
So, and what would be the foundation of the whole thing? Well, it would have to be God.
Right.
In our story, starts in the beginning,
right.
God. So God's the main player of our story. He's the one who is responsible for everything else. God created the heavens and the earth. However that's ultimately construed and worked out, that's a basic general statement. Mm-hmm. He's responsible for everything. Now, if he made everything, it belongs to him. And that's the whole concept of kingdom, a king in his domain,
right.
Okay? So that's foundational, okay? Another thing that's foundational for me is the idea that God, in addition to everything that he made, which is pretty cool, he made human beings as a very unique, for lack of a better word, creature, okay? Humans are different. They're similar to everything else. They're contingent. Mm-hmm. They're not little gods. Mm-hmm. They're things, right. Okay? But they're things of a very particular sort. And what distinguishes human beings from all other sentient creatures is not that they have a soul. Mm-hmm. These other sentient creatures have souls too. That's a standard teaching in the story, mm-hmm. the biblical story, the account of reality. And the church has always taught that, okay? It's the kind of soul that humans have. Mm-hmm. We have a soul that bears the imprint of God himself. We are like God mm-hmm. in a certain fashion. And this allows us to be the kind of creature that can be in friendship with God, okay? It's just like you and I can have a relationship different than you and, Fido or Fluffy or whatever, And, some people prefer that relationship, but, it's not the same gravity of kind of relationship that humans can have. So there's a...
Let me ask you this, because you've used this term a couple of times. I want to understand the context, friendship.
Yeah.
When you say I have a friendship with Jesus or friendship with God,
right.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that there's a personal element mm-hmm. to it. God is not simply an abstract concept. Mm-hmm. He is not a prime mover, like in Aristotle's sense. He's not just out there that kind of a mathematical construct that solves certain philosophical problems for us. I think he does solve those things, but he's also personal. He's infinite, mm-hmm. but he's also personal. Mm-hmm. He's accessible. He's able to be in relationship with. Incidentally, this is different than, say, the Muslim mm-hmm. Concept of God, where this God is grand and noble and powerful and moral and all these other things, but he's very far removed personally. Mm-hmm. The idea of having a personal relationship with God is not part of Islam. Mm-hmm. But it is central to Christianity. Now, I use the word friendship partly because the phrase personal relationship has been used so much, it's starting to lose its some of its punch, And so I'm trying to look for a fresher word that will communicate the same thing. And that's why I think of the notion of friendship. And actually, Jesus says at one point to his disciples, they had gotten to a point where you're my friends now. I'm telling you what I'm doing. We're connected in a different kind of way. And so I think this is something that the biblical model offers to us. And I think it's very appealing. Friendship with God. And it's a bit awesome in the classic sense of the word, and that we can have such a thing is a testimony to the rescue plan itself, which is probably the next thing on the agenda.
So let's go there.
All right, now keep in mind we have a friendship with God, but this is a friendship that could be betrayed.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. And so there's a rebellion, and this was not a good thing. And this means that man is rebelling against his sovereign, and a whole bunch of dominoes fall as a result of it. When you're raising kids, and a lot of parents can understand this, you say yes and no to your kids, do this, don't do that. We understand a little bit of how the world works, and we know that if our children do the wrong things, that they're going to break something. Mm-hmm. maybe it's a vase, maybe it's Papa's tool.
Or their arm.
Pardon me?
Or their own arm.
Or their arm, yeah. Or a relationship,
Yeah.
or a life.
Right.
And sometimes the breakage is irreparable. And so we have boundaries, right? Well, God's the same way. And what happened is when our first parents, Adam and Eve, rebelled against their sovereign, they broke the world. They broke the whole world. They broke their relationship with God. The friendship was severed. They broke their own souls. They broke their relationship with each other. Very soon in the narrative you can see now, oh, that woman who you gave me, God, she was the one who told me to do this, pointing the fingers. And then soon after that in the narrative you've got all kinds of nasties that are happening through the whole human race. And so now what? Man is separated from God. He is in rebellion to God and to others. He is now slave to a new master, Satan, who's not a guy with red tights and a pitchfork. He's a real powerful, a personal force in the world that is a mortal enemy of the king. And man is also enslaved now to his own corrupted nature, which the story calls the flesh. This is big trouble. And the king's mad. And he ought to be. Now what? Well, he could have lowered the boom, but he didn't. He decides to establish a rescue plan. And in his plan, God steps down. God gets low. God comes in among us and becomes a man himself, never ceasing to be God, but now taking on to his divinity also humanity in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then later on, and quoting the opening lines of the Gospel of John, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, I don't know about you, Patrick, but I think that's the greatest line in the whole story. I mean, the first line is pretty cool, In the beginning, God created that. That's awesome. But this, God becoming a man, being one of us to rescue us, that's sublime.
Yes.
That takes humility. And this is exactly what later writers describe Jesus having done, this great act of humility by becoming a man to rescue us. And he rescues us by making a trade. We're pretty nasty. We're made of good stuff, but we went wrong, okay? And we're guilty. Jesus is made of good stuff, and he doesn't go wrong. He does everything that we should have done, but we didn't. He does it. Where we failed, he succeeds in all ways, and especially before the Father. So he's got the goods, we got the bads, and he trades. He takes our badness on himself so that he can give us his goodness. And that trade took place on a small cropping of hill on the outside of Jerusalem. The locals called it Golgotha, the place of the skull, but we know it as Calvary, the place of the cross.
Right.
And on that hill, he took, in those 3 hours that darkness shrouded the cross, he took all the punishment that we deserve for our crimes against God. Our rap sheet was nailed to his cross so that now we could be forgiven because Jesus, well, the standard way of putting it is paid the price. But we say this kind of thing and I don't think people understand it. Now maybe the way I've just described it, you get a little sense of it. Jesus paid for my crime so that I could go free. And not just go free through forgiveness, God's mercy, but now I can get the righteousness, the merit of Jesus himself. That's part of the trade. He, the Father, made him, Jesus, who knew no sin, to be sin on our behalf that we might become the righteousness of God in him. That's the trade. The Reformers called it the marvelous exchange. I was just citing from Paul there in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. But this is a magnificent, unbelievable gift that God has given us at his cost. And this then rounds it out, really, all that's left now of the basic story, the core of it, which is what you asked about, is that a gift is being offered us. We can either say yes or no. If we say no to Jesus making the payment, then we pay ourselves. And I don't know why people are so mystified about Jesus being the only way of salvation, because he's the only one to solve the problem. You say no to what Jesus did, okay, now you're on your own. Are you guilty or not? If you're guilty, you pay. This is not going to be a pretty picture, okay? God offers mercy. You say no to mercy, then you're on your own, okay? But the decision that any person makes about that offer will determine where they spend eternity, to put it simply. Whether they spend eternity expelled from God's presence. Jesus said, "Depart from me." And that was, as he was describing this judgment process, and isolated away from the presence of God. And just as a point of information, if we are made for friendship with God and we are isolated from God forever, we will be ruined for that which we were made, and that will be hell, okay? In other words, it will be torment, and that's part of it, forever. But if we lay down our arms, receive the pardon that God offers, enter into his family, we enter into the best life we could ever imagine, forever. As C.S. Lewis so wonderfully put it, the door that we've been knocking on all of our lives will finally open. The yearning in our hearts, which has always been for the Father, will one day be fully satisfied. We will be his, and he will be ours forever. And that is happiness beyond what any of us could possibly imagine.
That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.